So welcome. Good morning, everyone. Really excited for today's Webshop where we're going to be going through and reviewing and discussing budget season simplified. So before we get started, just a couple of brief housekeeping items. So we've limited audio and video just to the presenters today. So don't worry if you're wondering why you can't unmute or turn your camera on. So if you're talking right now and no one's responding, you're not being ignored, you're just muted by design. But even though this is a presentation, we do want it to be interactive. So feel free to jump in with questions or comments. You're going to be able to use the Q&A function, which you can find at the far right side of your drop-down bar under the More feature. You'll see a Q&A button. We will leave time at the end for a dedicated question and answer. But if something pops up mid-session, we're happy to pause and address it. So we've got an hour scheduled here today to spend together, but we may not need the full 60 minutes, but just in case the conversation is flowing, we didn't also want to be rushed. So, and finally, do not stress about taking furious notes. You'll get today's slides plus a few other key takeaways and tools and templates that we're going to go through together. So really all you need to do right now is relax, maybe finish your coffee before it gets cold, and then we can dive right in here. So here's what you can expect from today's session. So by the time we wrap up today, I'm hopeful you're going to walk away with a clear approach to rough budgeting for restoration and renewal projects. We're going to be going through unit pricing benchmarks for common scopes that we find come up quite often. We're also going to be going through a simple tool that's able to calculate square footage without really leaving your desk. That's a fun one. And then AI prompts, we're going to be sharing with you that's going to help you to test pricing scenarios and other sorts of various key benchmarks as you guys go through some projects. And then finally, at the end, like I mentioned, we're going to be sending you a package of downloadable cheat sheets, templates, and everything else that we're going to be going through with you today. So really, the whole idea here is to make budgeting season less about chasing quotes and more about giving your stakeholders quick, informed numbers that you can work with. So just a couple quick intros before we dive in. I'm Stephen Bailey, Business Development Manager at WCP Building Renewal. And joining me on the call today is our CEO and founder, Dave Nate. So together, we've had the privilege of working on a wide range of projects across BC, from straightforward repainting jobs to more very complex envelope restoration work. So the translation really is we've seen a lot go right. And we've definitely seen a few things go sideways. So both are going to be valuable for us and today's session. So Dave, how many projects would you say that you've completed in your 20 plus years in the business?
Right. So first off, you can hear me? Audio is good, Steve?
It's all good. Yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
great.
Yeah.
And I apologize, classic timing. The landscapers just arrived where I'm sitting. So if you hear a weed whacker in the background, I'm really sorry about that. But yeah, over 2,500 projects over the last 2 decades. And I have the bags under the eyes and the character on the face to prove that I've been a project manager for some time now.
Well, I would say that's just experience joining, Dave. So don't
Right,
worry about
right.
that. And your audio is fine. We can't hear anything in the background quite
Okay,
yet.
great.
But yeah, you should be all good. Also joining us on the call is our lovely admin, Lisa Garrett. She's going to be monitoring the Q&A for us this morning. So that's who you're going to be interacting with over there. But before we dive into the content, I just wanted to note this is truly not a dog and pony show, but I do think it's important that you guys have just a little bit of context on who we are. So WCP Building Renewal was previously Wolfgang Commercial Painters. That is sometimes a light bulb moment for people because we have been in the industry and in business for well over 20 years now, but over time, our scope has expanded well beyond just commercial painting. So though that does remain a core part of what we do, but today WCP provides full building renewal services, helping property professionals manage everything from waterproofing to full envelope restoration. So while the name has changed, the goal has stayed the same, which is keep buildings performing well for the long haul. And then you also might be wondering, well, building renewal, that's a pretty broad reference. So what are we talking about when we say building renewal? So here's what we mean: the restoration and revitalization of a building's exterior and interior surfaces. So that includes building restoration, waterproofing, and yes, commercial painting. So essentially everything that keeps your building protected, functional, and looking sharp. So in terms of our exterior services, they really do cover the big ticket items that I would think most of you face when you're doing budget planning for projects that involve envelope restoration. So concrete, wood, metal restoration, commercial painting, membranes for parkades and for balconies, sealants and caulking, waterproofing, brick repointing, and then of course a lot of these services kick off with inspections. So these are just the areas where small problems can turn into big costs if not budgeted for properly. And then another question we get, or sometimes it's just not on people's radar, is interior services, which, you know, we're kind of coming into that season now, given in Vancouver the weather is changing, feels like by the day. But we're not just exterior. We also help clients with interior services like remodels, drywall and texture repairs, painting, finished carpentry, wall coverings and protection, and even do design consultations as well. So basically, if it touches the inside or outside of your building, chances are we've renewed it at some point in time. One thing I wanted to just leave with you guys and keep on the back of your mind throughout the presentation is that we do offer tailored lunch and learn sessions. So whether it's the session you're about to take in or another piece of content, we've got a variety of potential sessions. We've been doing tons of lunch and learns over the course of the last 18 months or so. They've been going great, and you know, we'd be happy to do it at our office, at yours, or we can even do it virtual if your office is remote and decentralized. And of course, lunch would be on us. So just to keep that in mind, if that is something of interest, I would be more than happy to have that conversation with you. But at this point, I'm going to hand things over to Dave. He's going to take us through the heart of today's playbook or today's session and show you how these services translate into real budgeting tools. Dave, go ahead, take it away.
Right, great. Thanks, Steve. And again, I apologize if the weed whacking comes through my mic. So yeah, budget season. If you are in the residential property management world, you're likely in budget season right now, getting OpEx and CapEx projects scoped and priced for your stratas on both commercial and residential. Stuff they're looking to do next spring and summer. If you're on the property group side of things, you likely go through budget season in June, or depending on when your fiscal year is for your buildings that you oversee. And then if you're on the engineering side of things, you know, the budgets come in throughout the year as the opportunities are presented to you, and customers are coming to you and saying, hey, we're looking at re-enveloping or remembering, I mean, whatever it might be. So either way, all three segments in the property management, property professional world, it's a very busy time of year and it can be really challenging. So, you know, and there's some common pain points through budgeting season that we're going to try to help alleviate for you guys. And so if we look at the next slide here, I'm sure you're all very familiar with this. So, you know, you are busy, without a doubt. I'm sure some of you on this call have up to 1,000 units under management. If you're on the property group side, maybe you're managing, you know, 1 million, 2 million square feet of industrial warehouse space. And if you're on the engineering side, you have multiple projects going. So when people start coming to you and asking for budgetary pricing, it can be challenging. And you're kind of herding cats with contractors, trying to get them to do you a solid to put a number together. And on top of all that, your stakeholders expect accurate numbers, right? They don't just want a rough idea. They want to know what they're up against. So in many cases, you're working with limited info, tight timelines, and you can get scenarios where maybe you get a couple prices and the prices vary wildly and you just don't know what to do. So we're gonna help you alleviate some of these or lessen some of these challenges as we go through this web shop for you here. So the first place you want to start, and where we're going to discuss our start off our topic, is with unit pricing. So what is unit pricing? A couple different ways to look at it. You can look at unit pricing as a price for an item. Like a good example would be a utility door and frame painting. You can get unit pricing for that and very easily just add up the number of doors and present a good budget problem. So like on office buildings, towers, stairwells, we see that type of thing all the time. Per square foot pricing, and really important that you grasp this right off the bat, is we're talking about per square foot of wall space, ceiling space, not your floor square footage, right? So it's the wall space, and we're gonna show you a great online tool of how to measure that. But that's where you get, how much per square foot to paint a warehouse, how much per square foot to do concrete spall repairs, or the third and final one would be linear foot. How much per linear foot to redo the sealants around the perimeters of a window? How much per linear foot to do expansion joints? So we're going to look at some common situations that you guys need to prepare budgetary pricing for and give you some market price benchmarks. Okay. So moving on to this next slide here. So we're going to give you a project budgeting template. It's really simple. There's 6 columns. It's going to list, you see on the left-hand side, we got a couple different scenarios for you. And this is just a snippet of what we're going to give you. Looking at some common things for warehouses, common things for high rises, some notes we're going to put in there for you. Then you're going to have your square footage or your unit count. And again, we're going to give you a tool to do that online from your desk. And then the most important thing is the actual unit pricing. There's drop-down menus there that are going to give you options for scenarios and then a contingency to build into your price 10 or 20%, depending on how difficult, challenging, unknown circumstances on the job. Okay, so I'm just going to work through a couple scenarios for you here. And again, unit pricing is just a starting point for conversations. It's not, by no means is it a fixed price. It's just where you get things going with your customers to give them an idea of what you think the pricing is going to come in at. So say we're dealing with a warehouse and you've got some concrete spalls. Everybody's seen that on warehouses if you deal with them. Typically, they come out where the expansion joint is. You remove that expansion joint, and there's a crack right on the side that turns into a spall. So, what do you do? How do you price this? It can be very tricky. Well, we've put together here, let's say you've got a scenario where there's 10 square feet of spall repairs, which may not seem like much, but it's actually quite a bit of work that goes into properly repair a spall. So on a warehouse, working off of a boom lift, super clear access, that's probably going to be about 300 bucks per square foot. Now, what does that entail? That's cutting the failed concrete, that's chipping out all the failed concrete, that's repairing the rebar, that's packing the new concrete, and then that's polishing it to get it ready for prime and paint. So 300 bucks a square foot, a 20% contingency. So your price is going to come in around 3,600 bucks just for 10 square feet spall repair. So if we jump down to the high rise there, concrete repairs, removal of failed concrete, that same 10 square feet, that's going to jump up. And the reason why is because of access. We're either going to be using swing stage or in some cases ropes. If we have to do it off of ropes, it's going to jump up to the 5, even 600 bucks a square foot in some cases. So you can see there we put in a buffer of a 20% contingency and you come to 4,800 bucks. So in the sheet that we're going to give you, you're going to be able to choose what unit price you want to put in. There's 3 or 4 choices of a range. So you can always choose the most expensive to make sure your budget is really good. Okay. Couple other items here that are super common. Expansion joints, we alluded to that earlier. Just a note here, we do hundreds of warehouses, and I can tell you that the most important thing to look at is not the paint system, it's the expansion joints. Uh, Service life of an expansion joint, boots on the ground, is 8 years. The manufacturers will tell you longer, and certainly owners want it to stretch longer, but it's 8 years. So if you're walking around your warehouses and you see any of the expansion joints delambing from the side, or they're very soft, or you see sort of cracks and checks throughout them, it's time to replace them. Expansion joints are the source of concrete failures on a warehouse 80% of the time. So here you go, 300 linear feet, 19 bucks a linear foot. That's off of a boom. And a 20% contingency, you're looking at 68.40 to do 300 linear feet. So call that 10 expansion joints if they're 30 feet high. So that is for the removal, replacement, the materials, the labor, and the boom rental. So it could be lower, it could be higher, but that's a good number. Okay. And since we spoke about utility doors, this is a good example of a unit price. So typically the door and the frame per side to prime, prep, and paint, 250 bucks, 10% contingency. That gives you a good rough budget for 10 doors. Okay, and we'll just look at one more just because it's very common. Deck membranes on high rise. So they're going to be concrete. This is for the complete removal of the existing deck membrane, install a base coat, top coat, broadcast of sand, 1,000 square feet. You're going to be looking at 30 bucks a square foot. That could be much higher, depending on what membrane is on there, and it could be lower. But that's a good number with a good contingency. So yeah, we're going to provide all sorts of scenarios for you to use on this budgeting template, and you can, start the conversation with your stakeholders. So let's stop there. Steve, have any questions come through that we can answer on the spot, or should we
Yeah.
keep rolling?
Yeah. I mean, one actually, I think you kind of answered you answered along the way, but the question in particular was when do we do inspection of expansion joints, and just other building areas? I guess like what would be, a healthy uh, amount of inspections maybe on the year, or how often should those
Yeah,
potentially
annual. It's
happen?
good. It's good to do it annual. Just a quick walk through, looking at the expansion joints, looking for failing paint, looking for the seals around the doors and the windows. So the sealant around the doors and the windows, that's key. If you can get up on the roof, look at the flashing, look at the seals on the flashing caps. Those are the areas that we see all the time on warehouse dock levelers. They rust out. Stairs going into the utility doors if it's above grade. Those are all the areas that you got to keep an eye on a warehouse. Yeah.
Right on. And I know before you jump into kind of the pros and cons of this budgeting template that we're going to be providing to everybody, there was another question just around like the best timing for when you're going to be doing budgeting, but I will speak to that in a moment. So
Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, yeah, let's just quickly look at some of the pros and cons of unit pricing. So, Um, in the industry on the contractor side, the old saying goes, the fastest way to lose money on a project is do it with unit pricing. So you gotta be really careful with it. So the pros are it gives you a budgeting reference to work from quickly, to start that early conversation. It allows stakeholders to start discussing things. It helps prioritize scope items. So if you're looking at membranes, sealants, painting, window replacement, whatever it might be, and you've got some budgetary numbers, you start to sort of point capital in the direction of the most urgent or pressing uh, repair. Um, the cons are they may not be site specific. So, and usually that comes down to access. There's a lot of tricky buildings with access out there, as I alluded to with high rise. Sometimes we cannot get to it with swing stage. So then we're looking at a stage scaffolding, like building up a scaffold that sends prices through the roof. Or if we're doing everything off of ropes, it starts to get really challenging. It's really hard to work off of ropes in certain instances. So numbers are going to change. Um, and some jobs are just so complex, they're just not suitable at all for unit pricing. And then prices can shift due to the market. I mean, the beginning of this year was a perfect example with all the changes down south and the tariffs. Nobody knew where pricing was going to be. So whether that be owners, suppliers, contractors, stratas, everybody kind of was in a pause mode. And we needed to wait for the dust to settle before we knew how things were going to go. And then, of course, I mean, luckily it's a distant memory now, but we all remember the supply chain shock that happened through COVID, and it lasted well past we were starting to get back to normal. Um, and we experienced spiking inflation on supplies. That was just it was a roller coaster ride out there. So the market can change. You get a budget price in the fall. By the time spring rolls around, things could have changed. So just some things to keep in mind there.
Yeah, and before we move into the next section, I actually just want to go back one slide because the thing to keep in mind when we send this document or this template to you guys, it's not going to look exactly like it does on the screen right now, but it's going to allow you guys to input and port numbers into this document. The cell format's already been curated, so that way it's automatically going to spit out the numbers for you guys. But this is not just going to help you guys with being able to communicate to a strata or a building owner or whomever your point of contact is that you're looking for this particular service for. It's also going to really empower you going into conversations with contractors when you are looking for services and they provide you with a budgetary quote. And if you guys have a number that's more or less aligned with what they're providing to you, then you know that you're getting an honest quote from them. But if you get something that's substantially lower, it allows you to say, hey, like, these numbers are a lot different than what I'm looking for. And that can actually become a little bit of a red flag. Or vice versa, you're getting a number that's substantially higher and you're just trying to understand, where these additional fees and costs are coming from. And I can say that from our experience, it is beneficial for points of contact to come into those conversations well equipped with an idea of where the quotes should land, where the budget should be, because then it just tells us that, okay, the conversations that you've been having with your point of contact, you've sort of set that expectation that, okay, this is kind of a general idea of where this project is going to land in terms of a cost standpoint. So not just like Dave was saying, for you to turn around quotes quickly for yourself, but also it equips you guys to have those conversations with your contractors as well. So
Yeah, well said. Okay, so let's look at, we're talking about square footage of wall space, square footage of deck. How on earth do you figure that out? You're not contractors, you're busy property professionals. So, how do you measure a building? Well, you measure a building pretty easily, actually, and that's using a tool called Google Earth. Everybody is well familiar with Google Maps. I mean, I don't think I go anywhere anymore without Google Maps plugged in. I wonder what that's doing to my brain. But Google Earth is a tool that not everyone is familiar with. It's a free tool and it's pretty remarkable. And we're going to take a look at it. So we're going to show you how to open up Google Earth and use the ruler. We're going to show you how to measure exteriors and other areas. We're going to show you how to apply our unit pricing that we just gave you. And you can do this all in 5 to 10 minutes and get pretty close to where you need to be. So yeah, let's take a look. Let's launch. This is a recording. Okay, so I'm just going to narrate as we go. So when you open up Google Earth, this is what you're going to see. And then the first thing you're going to do is pump in an address up in the address bar in the far left corner there. So we are, and I think we might have the top bar blocked off here, but that's okay. We'll be able to do it either way. So I pumped in 1225 West 11th in Vancouver. This is a job that we're doing right now. We're replacing decks. Show you what we can do here to take a look. So you can see on the right hand side, I zoom into the building just by pushing the plus button. And then what I'm doing here is I'm just grabbing the screen and moving the screen around. Um, Above the little dude there, the street view dude, there's these compass tools that just turn the screen around for you. So here I am just turning it around because I want to get a look at the back of the building. So I'm turning it around, I'm grabbing my screen and yeah, going to position in really nicely here and zoom in on the back of the building. So just takes a minute, not even in some cases. So there I'm positioned where I want. I'm going to go back and zoom in. So here we go. We're looking right at the back of the building. Yeah, I'll show you here when we go to Street View. You'll see the decks we're replacing, but I just went up and clicked the ruler icon, which I'm not sure you could see, but I'll do it again here. Boom, the ruler icon comes up. I'm going to click this 3D path button, and this is going to allow me to measure the building. I've chosen feet as my measurement. Now I'm going to move the ruler out of the way, and I'm going to start measuring. So you just click. Take the icon, click, move your mouse, your pad, whatever you're using, and away you go. So you can see this is 82 feet. Just under. Clear it. I'll do it again. Now, depending on how accurate you are with your cursor placement, you're going to get a more accurate measurement. So because this is 3D, it's measuring the depth as well. So 84, so a little bit longer that time. Now I'm going to measure the height. So I click at the bottom and the top of the building, and we got 27.77 feet. I'll do it again here. So again, yeah, 27 feet, right? So that's how you measure. And then using grade 5 math, length times width, you've got your square footage of the building, length times height, length times width. So here I just zoomed in and you automatically go into Street View and yeah, you get a really good clear view of the building. So those are the decks we're replacing with a new railing system.
That's actually happening today, isn't it?
Yep, yeah, as we speak. Um, yeah, so back in here, and here I'm gonna measure the perimeter of a window. So for instance, if you're doing a window replacement job, I can guarantee you your window contractor is using this to get a feel. And then of course he's going to read off of drawings as well and go to site. Zooming in, say I wanted to measure the decks. So when I ordered my spindles, when I was putting together the price or my railings for the owners, I used this to get a rough idea of the linear footage. And I could start talking to the owner and saying, well, this is what we've got roughly for linear footage. And then of course I went and measured it and we did a sketch and all that. So yeah, that's Google Earth. Great tool to get rough measurements of a building. And again, just reiterating, you are doing the square footage of the wall, not the square footage of the building itself. If you were to do a roof, it's the square footage of the roof, which is obviously going to be the floor plate of the building as well. So for roofers, for roof jobs, Google Earth is fantastic. Yeah. So there you go. So we've given you some unit pricing, and now we've shown you how to measure.
Great. Yeah, so that tool obviously is going to be helpful for when you guys are importing that information into the tear sheet that we sent to you guys. And as Dave mentioned, that is oftentimes how we come up with at least the first budgetary quote when we're approached for a variety of different sorts of projects. Okay, awesome. So we're going to shift into how we can kind of take all this information and how we're going to leverage AI in a way that's going to help us, to get even more granular and specific with getting budgetary quotes. So just a question for the audience or for the group here that's with us today. Who here is using AI on a daily basis? How are you currently using it? Is it in your personal life, professional life? Does it go beyond maybe just using it for email and email responses? But I'm just curious, who here is using AI, and then maybe how are you finding it to be the most effective for you? And don't worry, your boss isn't here, so I'm not going to rat you guys out. But as those responses are filtering in, I just wanted to note, for us at WCP, one of our goals for this quarter that's company wide is trying to figure out ways that we can leverage AI in our day-to-day roles that's going to, alleviate some time that it takes to do just a variety of tasks on a daily basis, and how to just make us more efficient, right? So I don't think we need to shy away from it. But let's discuss how this can help you guys build out your budgetary range on any of your upcoming projects. So the AI prompt example we used for this one in particular was, I have a warehouse in Vancouver that's 90,000 square feet of wall space, and it's also 4 stories high. I need a budgetary price to paint the warehouse, including typical preparation with 2 coats of paint, include cost to supply labor, materials, and a boom lift. So by prompt standards, I would say this one is relatively basic. The thing is with AI prompts, once you've entered it in, if it's giving you a response you're not satisfied with, you can always go back and prompt it further. The more detail you provide, the more specific you get, the more of a tailored answer that you're going to find. But based on this prompt, this was what the responses that we got. So we had a budgetary range that was on the low side, typical sort of mid-range, and then another one that's on the high side. So the nice thing is that now that you guys have filled out your unit pricing tear sheet, you should have a general budget in your head of how much a particular project is going to cost you. Then once you then poured in a prompt into AI, you can see if that cost and that budget is going to be way off, if it's average, or if you're finding that it's too high or too low. But for this one in particular, so on the low side, so that's more of a lean scope. So basically this might be a newer building. It still has good substrates. It's just, maybe there's a couple issues that need to be addressed, right? So this kind of assumes light prep, good wall conditions, and sort of minimal extras on that one. Then it'll give you a typical range, right? Where's that sort of mid-range, most common scenario? This should be the average budget for your project, by the way. But this would obviously assume, okay, there's going to need to be wall coverings. There's going to need to be, covers on doors, frames, a handful of overheads, and there's going to be some wear and tear on the building. So maybe perhaps the building is just a little bit older. And then the high side, right? So this might relate to challenging conditions. And again, it's going to all depend on the building, the scenario. But, this one is going to obviously assume more overhead, doors, heavier rust, significant spot priming, or just sort of extra complexity. So there was a question just in terms of, when should I do budgetary sort of investigation, and when I should start to put these together. And really, it's going to depend on a couple factors. How fast do you need to be able to turn this around? How urgent is the project, and how quickly does the work need to be completed by? But that's just a couple of the few key drivers that we're going to be looking at here. So using this AI prompt is definitely going to help you guys, and it's going to save you a ton of time, a ton of legwork. We are going to actually be providing everybody with an AI prompt library. So the resource that we're sending, that's going to include the spreadsheet of the unit pricing tear sheet. There's another tab, and it's just going to have a couple very basic fill in the blank AI prompts for you guys to then copy and paste and start to use in whichever AI platform that you guys prefer, whether that's Gemini, ChatGPT, Grok, or another one that I'm maybe not familiar of. But it's nice because it gives you the framework and a structure. And like I said, I fill in the blanks. So an example of that is, I'm a property manager preparing for budget season. This building is, fill fill in the blank with as much information as you have on the building, what the material is on the exterior of the building, whether it's, concrete, metal, wood, whatever the case might be. And it's approximately however many square feet it's going to be. I need to estimate costs for, and then here's where you really want to get granular and identify what the scope of work is going to be and ultimately what you're going to need. What are the rough unit costs and considerations? And this should be a good jumping off point, right? What I would say is that if you're even unsure of what questions to ask or what information to gather in order to get you to a point of having a rough idea on a budget, again, AI could be your friend, right? This would almost become your secondary prompt, right? Your first prompt could be, hey, I manage a building and I'm not exactly sure what the questions are, what I need to be looking for in order to fix, concrete spalling on the exterior. And it'll walk you through that process. It'll kind of give you that step-by-step guide to say, okay, here's the first, second, and third things that you're going to need to figure out. And then lastly, as you're doing this prompt, continue to do it in the same thread because it'll just build on that information. And it can even get to the point where, okay, here's what you're going to need. Here's the budgetary range. Here's kind of the process of how you're going to do this. And then you could take it one step further and say, okay, great. In the, if let's say the project is in Vancouver, in the Vancouver area, who are the best companies that I can call that are going to do a good job of this? And then it's going to list you, 3 to 4 different contacts for you to then reach out to. You can start the conversations with them, ask them for budgetary quotes. And then by the time you get back, not only do you know exactly what needs to be done, the average of what your budget cost is going to be, the low side and the high side, but you've also done your unit pricing tear sheet. So you should have that figure in your head and you're coming into those conversations dangerously equipped, right? Really, really knowledgeable, and it'll help the process move along quite quickly. So that's kind of the core content for today. I just wanted to note some of the resources that you guys are going to be receiving. I know we've touched on it a number of times, but you are going to be receiving that unit pricing tear sheet, which is going to be sent to you in an email either later on this afternoon or early tomorrow. And that's going to be for everybody that joined us on the call today. Within that document, you are going to get an AI prompt library that you guys can easily copy, paste, fill in the blanks. Within this slide deck, we're going to be sending that to you guys, but in this slide deck, we also have the Google Earth how-to guide, right? That's a really nice, effective tool for you guys to be able to get a lot of your square footage questions answered really without even leaving your desk. So if you don't have that information on hand for any of the buildings that you guys manage, that information, or at least an average or rough idea, is available to you just by going onto Google Earth and using that ruler guide that Dave had showed you. And then lastly, we are quite active with blogs on our website. I know markets may be oversaturated with blogs. It feels like maybe everybody's writing them, but we do tailor them for property professionals, much like you guys. So a couple of related blogs that we're going to send to you guys to make sure you have will be ones that we've recently written. How much does it cost to paint a building, right? A very simple question, but quite a complex answer. And it kind of walks you through where all those costs are going to be associated. Same thing with something similar, cost to replace a waterproofing membrane. Obviously, being in Vancouver, that's a request we get quite frequently. So kind of a look behind the screen of where those costs come from and why things cost the way they do. So I'm going to open the floor. We do have a couple questions that are currently pending, so I'll maybe get to those first. But we've got the next 20 minutes or so together. So if you guys do have to run, thank you so much for joining. But if you're feeling like there's some questions, whether it's in regard to the presentation you just saw and anything particular there, or maybe there's a project that you guys are currently working on that you need either advice or a question answered, now is kind of the time, right? We're opening the door, so to speak, and we're more than happy to engage. So as you guys are considering those questions, I'm just going to go to some of the questions that we have. Dave, this is a quick one, bit of a unique one. I'm not sure I know the answer to this, but the question was, what about elevators? So I'm assuming, obviously elevators being a key piece of the makeup of a building, especially, towers or multi-unit residentials. I guess, have you come across
That's
elevators when we're working
if
with
they're meaning
interiors or?
what's the budget price to replace elevators? A lot is the answer. That's out of our wheelhouse, but we've certainly worked on a lot of towers where we're remodeling them, and a part of the component is the elevator, new cabs, new electronics, and yeah, you're in the hundreds of thousands, sometimes over a million millions to do it. But yeah, not our wheelhouse. Yeah.
Fair. Another one, I feel like I know the answer to this, but I am curious what your response would be. It's just who is primarily responsible for budgeting, whether it's the property manager or the owner.
So yeah, it would either be the owner's representative or the owner themselves if we were looking directly, working directly with them. Uh, yeah, as far as I'm considered, that's who's responsible to get the budgetary price, and obviously the contractors provide that for you. But yeah, that's typically in my experience. That's the that whether it's a property group or a property management firm, that's who's tasked with getting the budgetary numbers.
Yeah, yeah, right on. And then, one thing as you were going through and discussing, and obviously there's external factors when it comes to taking costs into consideration, tariffs, cost of materials, economic impacts. Is there any other things you've kind of seen in your time where maybe, let's say, you've provided a quote and then the project doesn't start for 2 to 3 months down the line, and then there's been a significant impact on the cost itself, whether that be because the scope of work has expanded or things have changed? I'm not sure, but is there any sort of examples or things on the top of your head mind that may impact those budgetary quotes?
Right, good question. So, other than a macroeconomic factor like a black swan event or inflation, interest rates, they all have an impact. But in a normal economy, without something wonky going, the prices shouldn't fluctuate too much. They should just basically go with inflation. Um, but where the big change is on scope. So if the budgetary price is not does not match the scope of work that the client wants to do, whether it's a larger scope or a smaller scope, your budgetary price is going to be out of whack. So like to go back to a high rise, for instance, if you were doing a sealant replacement around the perimeters of the windows, the exposed windows, and included in that price was not the sliding doors on the decks, well, you're likely missing thousands of lineal feet. So that's going to have a huge sway on the price. And that's something that we could easily see because you think, okay, we just want to do the exterior windows because they're exposed. But then the owner's like, oh, what about the sliding glass doors? We might as well do there where would do that. Well, the contractor's all rigged up. So there's an example of a sort of a scope misalignment that could sway pricing dramatically.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and okay, great. Yeah, and then another question we had come through, and I know that we have numerous examples of this, but maybe a story you can speak to or just our approach. But question, it's less a question, but just I think more so asking about, underground parking, water leaks, leak detection, these sorts of things.
Yeah. So cracks on walls and ceilings, you can apply unit pricing to those. They'll range anywhere from $100 to $200 per linear foot, depending on how large the crack is and what material needs to be injected. So we do a lot of that. It's becoming very common. Just a caveat with injection, what you're doing is you're blocking the existing hole. You are not, or crack, you are not solving the source of water unless you get it from the positive side. But on some buildings, if the cracks are on the foundation walls, that's the only option you have because you're not about to excavate and figure out where the membrane on the outside has failed. So you're kind of chasing water all over the place. Um, but yeah, that's a great area to apply unit pricing. Another point on crack repairs if you have a crack on a ceiling, just a little tidbit, and it's leaking because the cars are coming down the ramp and they're bringing in water as they go, you want to attach that or you want to attack that crack from the positive side. So the membrane side, you do a little membrane repair and inject at the bottom, and then you've solved the problem. We're about to start one of those jobs in a couple weeks. So yeah.
Great. Well, I think we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. Next one I wanted to address comes from Arlette, who's probably one of our biggest, most loyal web shop attendees. So welcome back,
Great.
Arlette. But the question is, how do you view the use of drones for building exterior inspections in terms of accuracy and cost effectiveness compared to traditional drop methods? Great question, Arlette.
Yeah. So drones are becoming more and more common. And I think the technology is almost there to get super accurate inspections. Not quite. And I'll give you a specific example. So to inspect on the inside of a deck, with a drone is really challenging. Let's say you want to see the fastening points of flush mount railing system and you want to see them from the outside and the inside. Are the fasteners in good shape? Is there cracks on the post mounts? You got to be able to get into the deck and look at it. A highly skilled drone operator might be able to do it, but it's tricky. And then there's can be some returning walls that are really narrow and you just can't get the drone inside of it. And then of course with drones, there is the danger aspect. A drone operator needs to have a spotter on site. You sometimes need to close down areas because if the drone was to crash coming down, you got a problem there. But all that being said, it's getting really close to being a super viable alternative and very consistent. It will get there, I would say, within a couple years, where dropping down on a rope is no longer required. But for our engineering clients, we are still dropping down on ropes. They do both. They do drone and rope inspections. So, yeah, great question. I'll tell you that drone cleaning is not there yet. We've looked at it very closely, and you cannot clean a building with a drone like you can by dropping down on a rope and using a power washer wand. It's not there yet. It's getting close, but you just can't get the PSI out of the drones quite yet. Give it a few more years and it'll be there. Yeah.
Hmm, right on. Yeah. So another question, maybe last one. It was, are there apps to measure buildings? What do you say about that? And it uses AI, VR technology. I would say Google Earth is a great app to use. The one that we went through on the presentation today, it's going to be able to provide you with the most accurate measurement without really being on site. The one thing I would say about Google Earth, they are very good at keeping a pretty up-to-date perspective on the buildings that exist. Newer builds, and it does happen where you'll sometimes look at Google Earth and it's just a hole in the ground or the old building that was there. So it's not quite up to date and up to speed. But I'm always quite impressed. And Dave, I don't know if you find this the same, but I'm always pretty impressed with how fast they're able to maintain and keep their satellite imagery up to date. So
Yeah. And there is, yeah, I mean, Google Earth is the best that I've come across. There are some LiDAR scanners out there. One I think is called uh polymeasure. I've played around with it. It's fantastic for interior spaces. So basically you hold up your camera and you walk through, and as you're walking through it's grabbing all the items and capturing the square footage for you and item counts. Where it fails is on exteriors. It's great at for the first 10 feet, but then as you start to angle up it starts to lose measurements. But again, uh, give it a year, two, three. Those LiDAR scanners are going to be pretty good. I mean, that's the technology that Tesla uses for self-driving. So if we're going to trust it with our cars, we better be able to trust it to take a measurement of a building, right?
yeah,
So yeah.
right on. Okay, well, before we depart and wrap up for today, guys, I just wanted to note as well, our exterior and our interior services. So currently we're entering what we call our cold season. And, obviously it's because a lot of exterior work that we're doing and evaluating right now is for 2026. That being said, we do actually have some availability if you have any projects that are pressing that need to be done before the end of the year. So if you do, more than happy to have a discussion and see if it's something that we can help you guys with. And then, yeah, I mean, as we transition into our interior work, we've got a great pipeline of some interior projects upcoming. So if you have anything that is in need of completion that reflect the services on the screen, we'd be happy to have a conversation with you guys about it. And then lastly, yeah, lunch and learn. I know if that's of interest, I would be more than happy to follow up and have a conversation on what that could look like for your team. But on behalf of Dave and I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today. Watch out for our follow-up email. That's going to include all of the resources and downloads that we had mentioned. And then we will be back in touch with everybody for early registration for our next web shop, which is upcoming on November the 8th. That one is going to be about relationship and expectation alignment in building projects. So any questions post-session as well, feel free to reach out. But until next time, guys, thanks so much for joining, and we will chat to you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.